Good evening, you can say. So I think last two courses will be continuing with that last. First we had an overview of the process hazard analysis. Last week we had the hazard identification techniques, and today we'll be continuing with that. Today I'll be dealing with safety audit today, then hazard and HAZOP. So these are the three. That's balance of the thing. The other portion, the other identification like QRA and all will be taken up later. It will be taken up different times. So I'll start with the safety audit and then I'll move on. So here I'll be dealing with what is safety audit, what's the definition, what's the objective, scope, methodology, types of audit, what's the frequency, when it's to be done, and what are the elements, and then case studies, and then I have some live examples of how we did, and then so that you get to know this. So actually the safety audit is one of the most adapted and widely used technique for hazard identification, because other techniques are there which are more specialized. So this is a general common thing that is used in most of the industries. It's one of the you can say it's one of the most easiest and I think most accepted throughout the industry. You can say it's one of the it's for identify that potential hazards and gaps. See how do we like differentiate if we go to industry, how do we differentiate? We try to identify hazards and what are the effects on what. We try to see in terms of facilities like the equipment, damage to equipment, people, and then environment. So you can see people are centered there, and then it's all people centric, whatever it is. See maybe the equipments, the environment. So what it's depends on the more on the effect of the people. So I'll just give you the objective of safety audit. It's nothing but to carry out the systematic critical evaluation of the potential hazards involving personnel, plant, services, and environment also, and operations. That's basically that. Apart from that, one is to identify the potential hazards, second is to ensure that the occupational health and safety system of an organization is fully met as per requirements of requirement of a legal requirement, and also the company's own written policies. So this is basically the objective of a safety audit. So purpose of what is the purpose of an audit? See, like as a practical example, I'll see what we are doing as Chola MS. As I told you, one is we do audit can be done, one for a legal requirement, one can be done for a company's own policies. As I told, one is for legal requirement, one can be for company's own. And Chola actually we are doing around about of the 100 projects. 80 to 70 projects we are doing not for legal requirement. It's part of the requirement of the own companies own, to ensure that their safety management systems in place. We do only some 20 to 24% only for as a legal requirement. And this type of audits are mostly coming up in India, but which are MNCs that are operating in India, maybe in the service sectors or maybe in the manufacturing, even service sectors like you have Oracle, Dell, and other IBM, many of them, they prefer to have an audit of the system to ensure that the safety and culture is maintained there. Similarly, apart from that, then we have the manufacturing sectors. We have different manufacturing companies here, like Holcim for ACC. Then we have Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, Ford. All these MNCs, they don't legal is apart, but they ensure that a third party comes and audits the system to ensure that the company is safe, people are safe, protected. So even like say, as I told you, even Indian companies like Birla, Tata, they also now they're coming up with this system. Like they are developing a own process safety management system. PSM is a regulatory that is requirement in the Western countries as per OSHA standards, but India is also now moving into that. So even 5-6 companies of India also getting into this group. as per statutory requirements, see, for one is for requirement of the corporates, another is statutory compliance. Say Factories Act, as per Factories Act, a factory inspectorate can come anytime. He's authorized to visit any factory or any system or any establishment to ensure that the factory is safe and running. So one is the fact as per requirement. Second is, we had discussed about that MISH rules. There is MAH industries which are having storing chemicals or hazardous chemical above the threshold limit. So as per MISH rules, they are supposed to have do audit by third party every 2 years. So that is a requirement for them. Next is fire. Any establishment, hotel, maybe a industry, need to have a fire license. So a fire officer needs to come and audit. So that's another requirement. Similarly, as per electrical inspector has to come for every industry every year, and he has to do electrical inspection, and he has to sign that. Even for when you're storing petroleum or any other gas, oil or LPG, then that's also you have to get it to ensure that the license is verified, or you have to renew it. So that's also, so that for that also the concerned authority will be coming. Similarly, for if you have a boiler, the inspector factory, boiler inspector, he'll come for checking every year, that has to be renewed. Similarly, if you have pressure vessels like air vessels, high pressures or hoists, slings, forklifts, so this also has to be tested and certified by a third party. So many people, so many authorities are there who will be coming for this. Different authorities will be coming for this type of audits. And for oil and gas, there's a standard OSD. You know what is OSD? Oil Safety Industrial Directive. That's a requirement by the for any oil and gas to have an audit by the OSD. So that's also a requirement. And OSHA, as I told you, OSHA PSM is as a compulsory requirement for the Western countries. Now it's not. India just follows it as a reference only. And what is the audit frequency? When do we do it? I said one for legal recruitment every 2 years. Any MH industry has to do it every 2 years. And as per like OSHA's, when a company opts for a PSM program, that is a process safety management program. So when that is implemented, then you have to do audit for that. Maybe 2 years or once in a year, that has to be done. Once a company opts for a OSHA PSM, that has to be done. Audit has to be done for that. Similarly, if someone has did audit, like we previous audit has been, what is the compliance of it? Whether that has been complied with. So you need to do a previous audit for that, compliance of the previous audit. Similarly, if there is an accident or some incident in the industry, so then we have to verify what is the cause of that. So to ensure that similar accident don't occur, you need to do a audit for that. Or as I told you, MNCs have their own company policy and procedures that every 2 years or every 3 years, a third party has to come and do it. So this is the type of frequency, audit frequency that has to be taken care of. And when and all can it be done? It can be done at the planning and design stage. At planning and design, how can we do a audit? It is basically a review only. See, they have a design procedures, engineering plan and all that. So it's called PHASER, Project Health and Safety Review. So there we review the design standards, the layout, their standards, what are the design standards. So that is where we call, that's done at the planning and design stage. And during construction, when the plant is under construction. So to ensure that many accidents occur during construction, you can see even when constructing this metro rail, many times accidents happen, the bridges fall or the cranes fall. So during the construction side also, you need to do audit to ensure that safety systems are followed. Similarly, during commissioning, pre-commissioning, when the plant is set up, then you're testing the boiler, you're testing the furnace, you're testing the equipment, reactors, or entire plant. Then you need to audit and ensure that the safety systems are being compliant. Similarly, then this at the operation stage, generally as a requirement, it's done every 2 years or as per requirement. And during decommissioning also, sometimes many do it. What are the benefits of doing audit? See, once an accident occurs, like say, be it Bhopal or Texas or any accident, like what we had recently had, the GAIL incident or anything, what happens that brand image falls. See, GAIL is a very big, one of the reputed and Maharatna company. Once that accident occurred, the stock markets fell. Be it any other thing, ACC, many of these companies, maybe they don't do well in production, but if an incident or a fatality happens, the total image, brand image falls. Once the brand image falls, stocks fall. So it's a cyclic process. So that's where indirectly this type of things affect them. Maybe market may fall or market, but it will rise, depends on, say now the oil prices are falling. So many of the oil industries are down, but that will come up, but that doesn't affect their image. But if an accident or major thing happens, that will be in the mind of the people. There it will be very difficult in terms of psychologically affecting them. It will be a very cyclic. Once you go through that accident process, then it's very difficult for industry. So that's why MNCs or either good corporates go for audit. So it can improve the public image. So if a system or if their company is safe, there is no accidents or no incidents, then you have a brand image or it's maintained there. Then people, next is to increase awareness, understanding of HSS. When you're doing the so once you do an audit, then people come to know what are the HSS hazards and then what steps need to be taken to minimize it. Secondly, to reduce the employee and community exposure hazards, like say people outside the company or inside the company, so they can reduce the hazards, improve compliances to statutory and regulatory, and reduce cost by operating efficiently. And next is fines. So when something happens, some incident, then the factory inspector puts fines. So that's also it can be reduced. Now we are talking about the types of safety audits. What are types of safety audits? It can be by 3 types of the first. It can be first party audit, second party audit, or third party audit. Till now, what was I talking about? Third party audit. First party audit is basically if an organization does it by its own, through their own people, or say if like company like Tata has got different companies. So one from say one location in Tamil Nadu, one location at different places. So inter units they can do their own. So that's their first party audit itself to ensure that they'll. Second is second party audit. This is done by the customer and supplier. Like say now Hyundai has got different ancillaries, or Ford has got. So he goes and audits that person to see in terms of whether the supplier has got its own standards, whether it's maintaining the quality and in terms of safety. So that's called second party. And third party is what other like what we do by an external consultant on the. Now how do we split this audit system, this occupational health and safety? Actually, see if we go with a view, we need to segregate on what to look at and how do we look at. So we identify into 5 different sections. One can be on the safety management system. It will be mostly dealing with the systems and procedures of a company, basically system oriented. Next, on the safety and operations and maintenance, like do they have SOPs, do they have standard maintenance practice SMPs, do they have work permit system, do they have management of change procedures. So this all depends on the operations part of it. Then on electrical safety, are the electrical hazards identified, are they proper electrical safety measures taken, are proper license availed. So in terms of electrical, in terms of fire protection, do they have proper hydrant system, do they have proper fire protection system, is it maintained properly, is it adequate. So those type of things in terms of fire protection. And in case a fire happens, are they prepared to attack it? Are they having a response team? Are they having mutual aid? Are they prepared? Are they trained to handle emergencies? So we split this audit into 5. One is systems, one is on operations, one is on electrical safety, one is fire, and then one is on emergency management system. So in safety management system, what are those that we need to review or look at when you go for audit? Each, as I told you, it's nothing but a systems or procedures of a company. So what are those that a company may have a safety policy? So is that safety policy, maybe say if the company is established in some 20 years ago, you cannot have the same safety policy. You mean the people may be increased, the operation may be increased, the management should have changed. So you have to change and update the policy as and when required, maybe 3 years or 5 years as per the changes. So has that been updated? Is it available? What is their organization setup? Is there a safety officer? Say like say requirement of factory sectors that for every 1,000 people they need to have a safety officer, and above whom a safety manager, and he has to report directly to the chief executive. So is there a system of that? Are the people trained? Are the people given training on safety? Maybe they are given training on their operations, but are they people given training on safety also? Thirdly, how is the communication for safety? Are the people motivated to safety? Are they given training on safety? How is the safety communication? Are there safety culture surveys? Are there safety quizzes, safety motivation studies, videos to enhance safety? Then is there a first aid center for people's health, to welfare centers, maybe for women, for children, for the employees there? In case of accident, they don't need to rush to the outside. So do they have a first aid center there? Then do they have a safety manual? What are the procedures for following? Then do they have accident in case of? Do they have a system of accident investigation, and do they record that? In case of accident, what is the procedure for accident reporting and investigation? Then hazard identification assessment. Do they do a hazard identification? Then internal audits. Do they do internal audit? Is there a occupational health monitoring? Different industries have different occupations. Like say chemical, paper industry will have a different occupational health. Cement industry will have a different occupational. Textile will have each industry has its own hazards, unique hazards. So are those all identified, and do they have doors or antidotes for that also? Maybe if they handling silica, if they're handling some other thing, so specific antidotes for that, specific medicines for that type of industry. Similarly, one most important is part of the contractors. See, contractor safety system are neglected. Contractors mostly, they are the ones, if an industry is there having 500 people, there may be only some 50 to 60 employees, but most of the other workers are all contractors. So are these contractors also provided with proper safety systems? Have they given proper protection PPEs? Are they also monitored through health? Are they given trainings? So contractor safety management is one of the key critical areas of this safety management system. So many of the actions happen due to contractors. They are not that educated, they are not that trained. So many actions, so most critical is on their training, on their welfare. In terms of safety and operations, we have to see whether you have a work permit system. If you're doing a non-routine job, whether you are going through a work permit system, if you're doing any changes in your system, is there a management of change control procedure? If that changes has happened, has it been updated in PNID? If that has been updated, has that SOP been updated? If that SOP is updated, has that been put into your safety, into your operational manual? So it's a cyclic process. It has to be updated. You have to go through a procedure and approval for that. Then in terms of machine guarding, in terms of machine guarding, many accidents occur during improper machine guarding. Like if you don't have, like I showed you last week, one accident of not properly fatal accident of how if you don't have guarding, how people get accident. So are proper machine guarding available? Then in terms of occupational health, like ventilation, is a proper ventilation system? Is there proper illumination, noise like DGs and other things running? So do we have proper acoustic thing, so that or do we have proper earmuffs in this thing? Is there proper ventilation, cross ventilation for fumes to go out? Then illumination, proper lighting facilities. And do we, in terms of maintenance practices, are all equipments and all systems having their own maintenance procedures, like say pipelines, pumps? In each of those, are they having their own procedures, standard maintenance practices? And so in terms of personal protective equipment, are all people provided proper PPEs? So I'm just giving an overview of it. What are those? In terms of electrical safety, whether you have to identify whether the proper hazardous area classification has been done. So like many of those flammable areas are only ordinary lightings, there, then are they flame proof, then are they, whether proper other loose wirings are there, are they are all the critical equipments like transformers, bus bars, cables, and all these are properly maintained, or do they have a standard procedure for maintaining this? Then the review of the earthing and lighting systems, static electricity, lighting protection. So these are some of those things that you need to review in that. In terms of fire protection, identify what are the fire hazards in that plant, then review of their fire protection system. Do they have if they have a hydrant system, or even as like portable extension, is it maintained properly, is it valid, is it being, are the hydrant system working, is water coming in that, even having it is not, but is it functioning? So those type of, then are the adequacy of, then is it also the adequacy, like say a refinery or a chemical plant, it needs to have say fire water for 4 hours firefighting, but if they have a capacity of only 2 hours firefighting, then it doesn't match with that. So that adequacy also, and similarly what type of pressure it needs to have happen, like say tank farms, they need to have foam firefighting. If they have only water can only for cooling, it cannot suppress a fire. So for oil fires, you need foam type of firefighting system. So those type of things we need to look into it. Similarly, like say chemical handling, you have seen that chemical handling, like many accidents have occurred on the road while tankers, LPG tankers getting overturned, and many so are those trained procedures for training those chemical drivers, tram cars available? Are there loading and unloading procedures available? So that's another part, like are those warehouses properly maintained? So these are some things where you need to look into terms of chemical handling. In terms of emergency management, does the organization have a emergency response team? Does it have an emergency control center? Do they have a proper communication? Have they done previous mock drills? Do they have a mutual aid with their hospital, with people? Do they have the emergency numbers? So all these things we have to review on this. Okay, just like say if you are in this room, what do you think that you look into it? Say. Fire safety. Okay. In this room, if you do audit, what are the things that you look into? Just generally, okay, we'll take a look in terms of fire safety. What is that is not here? No, fire. What I split into 5. In terms of first, I talked about procedures, policies. Does this campus have any policy or procedure on safety?
There is a fire officer in the campus.
Okay. So has he given you any training to all the students?
He gives the training every 6 months.
Given to handle the small fire that erupts.
Yes.
And if it is large, then we will call them.
We had hands-on training.
If you want to call him, how will you want to see? You notice a fire. If you want to call someone, how will you? What is the thing you will do?
A small fire, first we'll try to control with our.
Where is the fire extinguisher?
Fire extinguisher generally it's on the outside of the corridor.
It is there? No, like if you audit for this block building, what things like, say in terms of systems and procedure, okay, you have a fire officer, he has given you training, so training is taken care of in terms of, so each of them are aware of that. Second, in terms of electrical safety, you will be looking at what can be this here, hazards here.
There are many wirings and all. There can be a short circuit.
Yeah.
And these heavy things, they can fall down. That we can look into.
Right. In terms of this paneling, this term, you can see a lot of wires, you can see a lot of combustibles. So in some short circuit can lead to, because this is this acoustic paneling. So any small thing also can lead to. So there's a given. So one safeguard is that they have an exit. I mean, it's neon light. Even if smoke comes, you'll be able to. I hope that light goes off also. It may be able to show you the way. So in terms of your electrical, you'll see that loose wiring are there, not properly rooted and properly supported, and this thing. Similarly, combustibles and all are there. A lot of these things which needs to be taken care of.
There should be an emergency exit also.
Yeah, this total building, correct. This building has got emergency exits. We have.
It has got stairs. That's
no,
but that is
one we saw that entrance. Do you have an outside?
Outside is there, yeah. When you enter on the left hand side, there is a left and both right side
You have
exit
it.
is there.
So we can. I'll just show you some live examples. You may have gone to malls and other city centers like that. So what is your view when you enter there, and when you go as a third party to audit? Then you will see interesting things. I'll just show you that. So what's the methodology basically of when you start doing audit? See, first we send a pre-audit data request, like what are the things that we require, what are those, like say we require their process operations manual, there's SOPs on P&IDs, layout and all that. Then we have an opening meeting with them to explain the methodology, what is that, what we are going to do, what are the site, what are the areas we'll be looking into. Then we do the site visit, then we see the plant records, and then we at the end of the day, or depends on that, we give a closer to what are the major observations, and then we send the report later on. So this is a basic methodology. So actually it's divided to, one is planning and then execution stage. At the planning stage, like say when is that audit has to be done, we give the date and time, and then what is the audit team, like a single person cannot, if it's a big industry where many operations are involved, like a refinery or a big plant, can a single person do? And even if 2-3 persons do of a single, if I am basically a mechanical or a mechanical engineer, then I cannot do if it's a chemical plant, we need to look into the different aspects, say fire aspects, in terms of chemical engineering, in terms of electrical. So we need to have a multidisciplinary team. We need to be just a combination of electrical, instrumentation people, fire expert, a maintenance expert. So it will be a multidisciplinary team. One is, then what's the duration? If it's a small industry, or like say if you say Ford or something, it will be big industry, 2 days will be required. If it's a big refinery where a lot of operations in this thing, then it may require 4 to 5 days with a team of 4 to 5 people, multidisciplinary. So it depends on the type of organization, type of industry, the volume of it. So that's how we plan it. So before site visit, we need to know, we cannot just go to industry and do audit. So before that, we have to send a data request to them and ask them what are the operations, what are the manufacturing, what are those procedures they have, so that then only once we have an idea, then only we can go and do audit for that. So we'll have to get those, review that before going to the audit place. As I told you, we conduct the audit and then we send the report to them. This is the methodology, and this is the format which we usually find. Say, you can see that we have applicable. One is that, say if you're auditing a systems, then say taking a work permit system, what is the applicable standards for the work permit system? What are the observations we found in that? Then we give the recommendations and then we categorize it. Say, how do you categorize? There we categorize by category A, B and C. Category A is the highest, high risk, B is middle, medium, and then C is low. So category A, how we differentiate is in terms of non-compliance to legal and legal requirements, like say if they don't have a factory license, if they don't have fire license, or if they not having this calibration of instruments or something which are more legal or non-compliance, then we put it as A. B is like say non-conforms to Indian standards, like say proper earthing is not there as per IES standards, or proper fire protection layout is not there as per IS 2190, or adequacy of this say your detector system, or so those type of non-compliance to Indian standards, IES standards, or international standard, maybe NFA, some reference standards. And then next is category C, like say proper machine guarding is not there, or you don't have proper ventilation, noise, this thing, those type of things we categorize C. So this is how we categorize: high risk, low risk, medium, and then low. So these are some of those that records. Once we do the audit site visit, then we'll have to look at the basic records. We see whether in terms of the occupational, whether they have a policy, whether the training records are there, whether they have done previous internal safety inspections, what are the complaints of it, whether they have implemented these recommendations, then whether any accident has happened, what is the corrective action taken against, are there any repetitive, so that have they taken any suitable measures for that to prevent further accident to be done, whether SOPs, proper standard operating procedures are there, because when you're doing any different type of operation, each operation has to have a standard operating procedure, so that even a new person comes, he looks at it, he should be able to run the plant. So then record of work permits has to be reviewed. Then maintenance testing records of even the apart from your equipments, like say different equipments, pumps, compressor turbines, you need to even see the record maintenance testing of the hydrants, the fire detection system, smoke detectors, how are they also working or not. Then medical records of the employees, then industrial hygiene surveys, whether noise ventilation has noise study has been done, mapping has been done, ventilation study has been, whether it has you have what is the whether what is it air changes that is required, whether that study has been done, illumination study, then whether there's an on-site emergency plan, whether mock drills has been conducted in terms of effluent, what are the methods of effluent discharge and what are the records that they maintain, the housekeeping records, then layout, maintenance procedures, calibration testing records, shutdown maintenance, say inspection books, records of previous audit, safety and transportation hazards, chemicals. So you can see that n number of things, these are all a basic requirement when you do audit. So it's not that easy, like, so you have to verify each of those and then put that in the record, so stating that these are not there. You see the physically you have to observe and then put those records. So it's it's a very, very comprehensive and very lengthy this thing. So some of the statutes which we need to follow for this, like we need to look into the Factories Act. Already you know about this Indian electrical rules, explosive rules, gas cylinder rules when you are handling this type of different gas cylinders there. Then static mobile pressure vessels, like say air pressure, air receivers and those type of thing. Petroleum, when you are handling petroleum and other rules, Petroleum Act comes into it. Then MAH rules, Mines Act if relevant there, dock workers if they are handling in the shipyards. Then Indian standards, these are some of those related, some IS 21902, like maintenance of fire extinguishers, earthing, detection system, alarm system. Then these are international standards, some of the international standards. And most important for us are this IS 14489. This is the basic IS which we refer for doing the safety audit. IS 14489 is the Indian standard for doing it. And then apart from that, we have National Building Code 2005. This is very, I mean, like when you do a building audit or like go for audit of a hotel or any other establishment, then you need to refer this. This gives the entire reference to how we do audit, what are the standards that you need to refer in terms of fire safety, life safety, everything gives it. National Building Code. Then you have this OSD, then you have Tariff Advisory Committee and other general standards. So this IS 14489 has got some 31 elements that which we need to look at. I already discussed many of those things already, as I discussed. Most of the things I have discussed here. These are the 31 elements which we need to split and then look into it into depth. This is just a simple case study, like it happened in 2001 in US when 99,000 tons of sulfuric acid was suddenly burst into a, you can say, into that surrounding river and killing more than killing all the fish in that environment. So what happened was that this tank farm, which was supposed to store sulfuric acid, they stored spent acid. Spent acid is what? It is sulfuric acid 98. Spent acid is weaker acid. So what happens? The vessel gets, the tank gets thinner. It gets corroded very fast because of that. So what happens? They didn't underestimate. If they are going to store that, they should have taken different. Not used that. They should have used some other tank. Like they should have put tile lining for that. Taken other corrosive painting. But they instead what they took that is stored in the sulfuric acid tank. So what happened? That much of acid, it got slowly corroded and it was let into the sea. They were doing welding. that happened when they started welding, so leaking, so they started welding. When when they're doing the big tank, suddenly got erupted and all this thing happened. So what basically we learned from this is that we need to understand the process. We need to do a periodic checking. We need to when you're doing hot work, you need to take work permits. When you're changing the process material, you need to understand do the SOPs. So these are things which you need to learn by that. So what I'll just show you, I told you I'll show you some live this is a automobile ancillary unit. So so first is this how we give a summary of that. It's not a full report, it's just the findings, major summary of that. We call it a SWOT, that is strength, weakness, opportunity and threat. So in that it is a engineering unit, and they store different, I mean they do the basic engineering operations. Apart from they may be storing some HSD and other things. So here their strength, you can say that that plant had hydrant and sprinkler system, there's fire protection was there. They had metal conduit wiring. Here we see, you can see all these are plastic conduit wiring. So as an industry they use only metallic conduit wiring, so that even if the plastic even gets overheated or overloaded, it doesn't allow, it doesn't spread that to that. So they use metal conducting wiring. Smoke detectors are there everywhere. Then flame proof lighting installation, because they are handling LPG and other diesel. So then they have fire door installations. Say when you're handling hazardous thing, then the fire door is there, so that this, in case of fire, this will not, fire not spread to that. Okay. Then similarly this ACs, you see this ACs that's running. So in case of fire, from that something fire happens, then automatically through the ducts, many people in many, like say even accidents that happen in schools or in theaters, what happened? Or people died due to fire, or fire died due to smoke? Smoke is the one that passed that. It comes through this ducts. You see, very fast it travels through this duct. So smoke is the very fast. I mean, by the time the fire occurs, it anyway, only the spread is through smoke. So that is more critical. So what happens? Each of segregation, say from that unit to this unit, they have fire dampers that once it senses the smoke or fire, automatically cuts off that section, so that fire doesn't spread to another thing. So they have those fire and smoke damper installations. That's most critical. I mean, that has to be done. Similarly, fire extinguishers are there. What is their weaknesses? They don't have work permit system. They don't have systems and procedure. There is no SOP procedures, written down procedures are not available for the HSD area and paint mixing area. Then persons were not properly wearing this PPs. What is PPs?
Personal protective equipment.
They are not wearing this PPs, and there is a compliance to that was for. And then into the transformer, they don't have soak pit. I'll just explain what is it. And what is that opportunity? That is, the suggestion is, consider providing safety shower in case the chemicals are spilled or something is there for them. I think they need to suggest for a safety shower. This HSD and other flammable, they don't have suggesting for static electricity, flange bonding. That is, you talked about static electricity, no? Need suggest for a flange bonding, that is jump overs. Then rubber mats are not there for this main panels. Then lockout tagout system, when they're doing some work permit system, you need to cut off the panel, lock it, so other suddenly someone goes on, then he will get. So the lockout tagout system. Then thermography needs to be done to ensure that the system or electrical system doesn't get overloaded. Then fire and alarm systems not available in all the areas, only some areas are there. Then and in terms of threat, that is what was critical there was that earthing was not proper in the paint shop. Paint shop handles a lot of highly flammable solvents. So when you enter any paint shop or when you enter any area where it's handling, you need to earth. You will have a door with the earth strip. So when you catch that, all the charges in you are dissipated. So they don't have the basic things are that paint shop itself was not body earth. So there will be a lot of possibilities of static charge accumulation. So you need to have provide earthing for that. Proper PPs are not to be used, are not being used. Then this transformer wheels, I will just show you the photograph. Earth pits and HSD trunk. Earth pits were not available, I think. Then foam extinguishers. I told you when you're handling this HSD or this type of solvents, you need to have foam type of extinguishers. So these are some of those. See how we split stuff. He splits on safety management system, safety in operations, electrical safety, fire prevention. This is observations there. In safety, HSE policy is not available. Hindi work permit is not implemented. Unit is not a code for near miss accidents. SOP is not there. PP compliance is not there. In safety and operations, all this is there. So you can see that some photos. I'm just showing the photos. They're not wearing PPs. Here you can see ordinary light fittings where the paint shops having different types of flammables and this. So they're having ordinary type of this electrical. So possibility of fire can happen when vapors keep generating there. So you need to have flame proof fittings in that. Then these panels, these cables that are going from this from the flammable area to the, that needs to be sealed. These openings are there, then fire can spread through that also. So cable pass needs to be sealed. Then this leakage they observed near that. So you can see that that can cause to fire accident in case there is some source of ignition. Then this transformer, I told you, this transformer needs to be locked. We have big transformers here. They will suddenly move. When it happens suddenly, it can lead to short circuit and something. So you need to be locked. Then flange bonding for not available in this HSD lines to dissipate static charges. This rubber panels were not having earth markings, nor they having earth. So in case of suddenly purple person get electrical shock. So this I will just show you about that. Just go fast. This is that one mall in Bangalore. So what are the good features they observed there? They got a firefighting system as per NBC. I told you about National Building Code. They have a good firefighting system there as per that. There is the hydrants, there are sprinklers, detectors. Earthing system is good for all critical equipments. ELCBs, there is earth leakage circuit boards. Earth leakage means like say this is for protecting people in case of earthing, say suddenly some leakage is there, that will automatically trip the system. ELCBs, you call it as ELCBs. Then strong security forces there, proper customer management, security guards are posted, reflective stickers are painted in the basement, then electrical preventive maintenance programs are in place. These are the safety management systems. So that major mall, it's see they don't have a safety policy. In a mall in a day, footfalls can be around 5,000 to 10,000. So you can see if major fire happens, how many people will be affected. So that if that much people are involved, then the management has to ensure that there's a policy to ensure that people are safe. What is that they need to do? So there is a safety policy needs to be prepared, or some safety stewards or safety attendants has to be nominated, so that in case of fire these people can attend, or for the workers there they also can be trained there. Then monthly reports to be there, safety training to be included, accident and incidents to be recorded, first aid register to be maintained. In terms of fire sprinkler protection, they have these detectors, but those are all covered, like still the here detectors are there. You have seen detectors, no? Those they'll have, but the covers are put into that. During commissioning, those covers are kept, so still it is kept as it is. Then existing smoke detection is to review against IS 2189. That is, adequacy was not there. Then integration of panels. So even if it comes, where will it give alarm? It should give to alarm at the to either to security. So that integration was not there. Just the smoke detector only was there, but that's not integrated with the fire alarm panel. Then detectors are not provided main critical areas like DG room, basement, trial room, where possibilities of fire can happen. Then in case in case of fire happens, what the first thing you do is you cut off the electric thing. total so that I mean others it will lead to fire or spread, and then also it can lead to shocks and so then how to use the fire? You need to firefight it. So for that, when you cut off the electric system, then how will the fire pump run? So for that, as per NBC norms, you need to have a DG separate emergency DG pump. So that itself was not there for that. So when you cut off the power, then you will not have fire also to firefight. So that is one of the critical things. They don't have a DG operated fire pump. Then most of the hydrant points they're not able to access it. They're all kept locked. Then training. Kitchen is the area where in malls most of the fire occurs because of the kitchen. They have LPG and all those things. So that itself, people are not aware. In case of fire, what will they do? How will they tackle it? Then see, fire doors are not there, landing doors, water main lines and others shall not be linked. I'll just show you photographs. So many observations are there. See this portion of the detectors. You can just see that detectors were there. But that is those detectors were very close to this thing. So in case close to the AHU line, so when the air is falling on that, it's very close to that detector. It will not allow it to sense it. Only that cool air will be coming. So you need to place 1 point, as per NBC code, you need to place it 1 meter away from that. Even if it's there, are they adequate? Are they correctly maintained? That's another important. Maybe they have, as per requirement, they keep putting it. But where it is to placed, how is it maintained, whether it's working, whether it's connected to the alarm panel, those are things that you need to look into it. See, this is what I told you. You can see the smoke detectors, that cover is still put there, that the sprinkler system doesn't have that bulb. They just put that and then kept it. It will not sense it. How does the sprinkler works basically?
There will be a sensor, smoke sensor.
No, they'll have this one bulb, quartz-side bulb like. So at 60 degrees, it will have a basic chemical. At 60 degrees, it will when it senses that smoke or heat, it will burst, and then automatically. That's called automatic sprinkler system. So that system itself was not there. Just put the lines there. Similarly, they put that caps on that, so it will not be able to sense it. So these are all critical. They have spent money, but it was not maintained or something. So when you go into a mall, when you see it, what are the risks? Big risks there. So and just for you to know, auditing of a simple mall, how critical it is. See, if you want to assess this hydrant boxes to fight fire, it's kept locked. You cannot go and pull it. So actually, those locks has to be kept there itself. In emergency, you need to open it. This hose then. See, the portable extinguishers, you can see, are blocked. How do you know? You told there are some portable extinguishers. Where is it located for it emergency to know, go and identify it? So it has to be properly identified, and then and then properly away from obstacles. Then so you can see the lot of cables are passing through without any segregation. So you can see the cables from fire can occur in many of these cable rooms or the electrical rooms. Then that will spread to all the other areas. So it needs to be sealed, as I told you before itself. These doors from each of this electrical room or this thing, they need to have fire doors. This is not working. Then all these fire doors are not there. Lift is coming up till the basement. Lift should be segregated from basement area, and positive pressure to be maintained in the lift area. So in case of fire, the lift should not be working, and even if it comes, it should not come to the basement, because basement is where you parking all your vehicles, and fire from that can spread to that other areas. Diesel is, so you can see a lot of leakages, and DJ tanks are located near the radiator, so any spark from the radiator can also affect that. Then electrical safety, I'll just show you photographs of it. So transformer is kept there, but it is directly communicating with the buildings. In case of fire, that will directly affect it. It should be at a higher, at least 1.5 meters from above the tank. This diesel pump is having ordinary light fittings, not flame-proof fittings. Then so you can see the type of loose connections that's kept nearby. So you can see a lot of this combustibles, those foam, this thing and all, and loose wiring. Any short circuit can lead to that. Most of that mall area has got like this type of wiring only, loose wiring and everything. Most of the things you can see there. And they have in the body, in that floor, 6th and 5th floor, they are having this type of welding. So this is another source of ignition. Then this portable type of things like this, which can lead to sparks. Then lightning protection system. This generally they have this, but whether this not as per the IS standards, this just generally, I mean, whether this adequate to take that type of lightning protection system. Then earthing for this, body earthing has to be provided. Then you can see the panel rooms. This battery rooms are areas where you have lot, I mean, possibility of hydrogen generating from the battery room. So that area needs to be have flame-proof fittings. Then panels, no rubber earthing, no mats, nothing about that. Earth pits are not identified. Emergency management system, they don't have. Mock drills are conducted. Training are to be provided. See, so you have a lot of this LPG cylinders that are used for the kitchens there. See how it's located in the area where the vehicles are moving. So possibility of this getting damaged, hitting it, and it's not properly secured. So that you need to take it, and there's no gas detection systems there, and vehicles can possibly hit it. It's quite risky. You can see this. As per rule 43 and 44 of gas cylinder license should be acquired possession of this. They don't even have license. If you have gas cylinders, LPG cylinders above 100 kgs, you are supposed to have license. They are storing more than some 7, 8, or I think 10, 11, 12 cylinders. So they are not following this. And in case of any fire, the whole building will be in danger. So the risks, I mean, see when you enter a mall, these are the things that you need to look into it. See, a lot of these diesels, if you go underground, under the thing basement, you'll see the diesels are stored in very haphazard manner, which can lead to fire. Drains, you can see if any fire in this, anyone smoking into and put this, that will also lead to this fire. And in their warehouses where they store this different cartons and other things, you can see the loose wiring. Near next photo, you can see a lot of loose wiring cables and all this. This thing can lead to big major fires. So long as you don't, so long as you're not aware of this, I mean, once you know the risks, then you'll see how it is. You can see storage practice, housekeeping is not proper there. Combustibles in the ground floor, you can see a lot of combustibles are stored there. So this just to give you a brief understanding of how when you do an audit of a mall. So when you go to a plant where you have a lot of this other flammables handled and other major operations there, then it will be still major risk.
This will be A recommendation.
This license where they don't have license for this LPG and all, no, that will come under directly under category A. I'll just go to HAZOP. Past already briefly discussed about HAZOP and HAZIT. Safety audit, is there any doubt? I mean, you can just give a brief view of how it is to be done. What are the methodologies, when it is done, what is the type of audit, when it is to be done, frequency, all those things I have did, and what are the elements that you need to look into it. In HAZOP, we have two types. One is that HAZIT and one is that HAZOP. So HAZIT is basically, it's also a technique, hazard identification technique, but similar to HAZOP, but it is for non-process generic hazard. It's for identifying apart from the process hazard. I already told last time, it's for generic identifying general hazards. It's like, say, in terms of like earthquake, layout, security, all emergency management, all it. See, we in HAZOP we look at the process parameters. We see the deviation in the process parameters. We see the process. Here we don't look at the process. We see the external apart from the process. So non-process, you can say, consider non-process hazards, and this is a process hazard. You can see. What are those that we need to look into that in hazard checklist? Hazard. one is the natural and there are two types of hazard. One is natural hazards and then man-made hazards. In terms of natural hazards, what we need to look is in terms of climate extremes. Say if we having putting up a industry in a desert or where 50-55 degrees are there, then you need to take adequate prevention measures like that. Or if you're putting up a plant in say where extreme climate like Himachal Pradesh, where the temperature can go freezing at 0, then possibilities of any chemical getting freezed or this oil or anything, then you need to provide that type of take that much of care. Similarly, where there are wind, dust, flooding, sandstorm, so at that type of you need to review that based on that type of location. If you have that type of extreme climates, then you need to take adequate precautions. Are adequate precautions taken? That's what we need to see. Say in terms of lightning, say in hilly areas, you'll have thunderstorms very high. So that type of, then you need to see if that much of that type of lightning protections are taken, lightning arresters are there. What is that type of thunderstorms? Say if Chennai has 29 thunderstorms per year, Himachal may have 30 to 40, 45. So you have to consider those type of thunderstorms there. Then in terms of earthquakes, seismic zones, we have 4 seismic zone, 1, 2, 3, 4. So according to that type of zones, are these foundations taken care? Are these buildings designed as per that seismic zones, earthquake? Then soil erosions, like if we have a plant near the coastal side or the river side, then possibility of. So what type of foundations are there? Are these buildings designed for that? So those type of considering natural hazards, we need to see whether the plant has been designed for that type of thing. In terms of create man-made hazards, it can be security hazards. Say if you go to a mall or something, then you will see people frisking you. Are they done? Say if you enter a refinery, you'll be entering hazardous zone. So are there people trained? Are the security available for that? What type of security can be available? So what are they taking care of this terrorist activities if it's located in Rajasthan side? If you see, we do a lot of audit in that oil and gas side and in Rajasthan. This is the border of Pakistan. So you'll see that before entering, everyone will be need to go through a police procedure, need to go through a security procedure. So those aspects, everything, foreigners are there, they'll have to enter in the passport, everything. So those type of things are essential for that. No foreigner will be allowed to enter there unless he submits passport and copy onto that. So those type of security things are there. Are they already taken care? So this is how we need to check into that. Then geographical structure, infrastructure. Like say this GAIL pipeline now, they are planning to put this GAIL gas pipeline from through Tamil Nadu through Bangalore. Why was it not given? Because of it was stopped now. They're not allowing, because one was that accident that happened here. So are these what is this reasons for that? Are they properly designed, or are they checked on this? So we need to say the geographical infrastructure, then proximity to population, adjacent land use, environmental issues. Say like in Orissa and this thing, some of the steel companies are not getting licensed due to environmental issues because of the forest degradation. So those type of things are there. Are these already taken the MOF approvals? Then in terms of communications, are there adequate road links, infrastructure in case of to transport materials or transporting test of emergency people away? Then communications, do they have proper communication systems? Then how do they dispose their discharges without contaminating the ground? These are the type of checklists that they have. Then they have health hazards. Are these all taken care of? Asphyxiation hazards, toxic hazards, physical hazards. Are these all working hazard, transportation? Then fire and explosion hazards. Are the equipment layout properly? Like are the warehouses separate, tank farms are separate as per this thing? Then source of ignition control, flammables, inventory. So these are some of those things that all in terms of utilities, as the plant has adequate instrument air, is it sufficient to is it having a buffer vessel also? Then do they have a proper steam, fresh water, nitrogen, diesel? So all these things we need to take into consideration. So it's a general thing where we listed all the hazards. We are not going too deep. We see the overview of it, so that this we don't leave out anything. But when we come to the HAZOP, we look into the process only, inside the process, inside what is happening inside the vessel, inside the pipeline. We don't look into this type of thing. So we see the overall hazards, and then we come to the HAZOP where we look into the process details. So what is hazard? What is hazard? Can it's also hazard identification technique, correct? What is the difference?
Hazard is for general hazards,
Okay.
whereas hazard mainly focuses on the process.
It's a deviation from the design intent. Deviation from the
Standard operating
design intent. See, design intent, say of a tank, storage tank. What is the design intent of the storage tank? To store vessel at some required volume. Deviation from the design intent, it is supposed to store. It is not storing at that volume. So that is a deviation, or if it's supposed to work at that temperature or pressure. We are deviating from it. It's going at higher pressure or higher temperature. So deviation from the design intent, that can lead to hazardous catastrophe. So basically, it's from the design process. Deviation from the design process. Okay. When hazard should be done? It can be done at all these stages. At the basically should be conducted at the design stage, so that many changes cannot happen after that. But sometimes people do after that also. Say it can be done at construction stage when accident occurs, or decided by safety audit, when this audit tells that it has to be done, or when there's a change in management, or and as per statutory it has to be done every 5 years at least. Every major hazardous industry has to be, you have to do a hazard every 5 years, review it. It's a benefits already, you know. So what's the methodology basically in a hazard? You identify, we have a process P&ID here. First is this, we identify a section of the plant on the P&ID. Identify section of the plant means it can be, a plant can have a different a pipeline, wall, pump, then it can have storage tank, then again it have walls. So identify a section can be this, a section can be this, or it can be taken this as a whole section. We just identify section of the plant in the P&ID, define the design intent of the, say if you are taking this section, define the design intent of this tank, maybe in terms of say process parameters, maybe in terms of level, temperature, pressure, whatever the design intent of it, and select the parameters, what different parameters, chemical parameters, what and all I had told earlier, temperature, pressure, level, flow, composition, different parameters that can occur in this process area. So we had to find a deviation from the design intent. So we are by using guide words. There are some 7 guide words, basic guide words. Okay, I will just take you. So when you use the guide words on the parameters, that gives the deviation. So this basically is the hazard. Deviation from the design intent. That is when you're using guide words on the parameters, that leads to deviation. Once you find the deviation, what is the cause of the deviation, the consequence, and then the existing safeguards, and then the recommendations. So this is how it is. So you can see that, study the node, select a node, maybe anyone, maybe pump, compressor, turbine, anything you take it, pipeline, then select the deviation. Deviation is what I told. If you take a node and you take a parameter say temperature, node use the guide word, no temperature, that is the deviation. Cause of the deviation, consequence, safeguard, recommend again, then it's again take the next node, it will be continuous line.
What is P here? G plus P.
This is the guide word. Guide word, it can be no, more, less. There are 7 guide words. I will just, it's there. So guide word plus process parameter, maybe temperature. No temperature is what? That's a deviation. This leads to this deviation. What is the cause of this deviation? From that, what is the consequence coming out from that? if there is a safeguard, and then the recommendations. If not, we give the recommendations for that. So it's a deviation from the design intent. It's just I'm putting simply for you. This is a basic P&AD already shown you before itself. So this is how a HAZOP report will be like. You can see design intent, part considered, drawing number and all that. So the guide word is no, deviation is you're putting on that no material, or he's telling no material on that. So possible cause can be the supply tank A is empty, consequence is no flow into the reactor, none shown. This is just a basic thing how it is. HAZOP report, HAZOP worksheet will be. I will take an example of it. So node I already told you, it can be pump, compressor, anything. Parameter, these are the common parameters: flow temperature, pressure, combustion, phase level, addition, all these things. And guide words, these are the guide words: no, more, less, as well as, part of, reverse, other than. This meaning of this: no means say no flow, more means more or higher temperature, high temperature, high level or something. Then less means less flow, less temperature. As well as means, say if you are operating, you're feeding chemical into it, then as well as you're adding steam to it, or cooling cooling through the cooling, as well as. Then part of means only some of the intention, that is only part of the intended fluid transfer. So if you are having 2 tanks, only you're supposed to transfer full to that full level, but only part of has been transferred. So only why it is that we need to discuss. Then reverse, possibility of reverse flow. Then other than, like instead of transferring A material, you're transferring B material. So these are the main guide words that will be used. The causes can be either due to human error, improper human error, or can be due to equipment failure, or can be due to external events like fire from the other one, from the nearby tank corners effect. So these are the causes that can happen. Consequence. So see, you can say guide word, it can lead to this is what I have shown you. Then safeguards are those that are detected, like say it can be to minimize or mitigate that cost. Can you just explain what are those safeguards in this? This is a tank, storage tank. It's a flammable liquid. What are the safeguards there? What are the parameters that is considered here? First.
Number of relievers,
Huh?
safety relievers.
Okay. Oh, no, what are the parameters and all we have? Temperature and
composition.
Temperature is considered.
Composition of vapor.
Okay, then.
And
Pressure.
Pressure. Level is it.
And now what are the existing safeguards now from this? What are the, can you just understand what are the safeguards here now? See, for level, what are the safeguards here? Have they given any safeguards here for level? For in case of high level or low level, can you see any L? Level means L. Here. That is for level indicator. He is not given for high, he is given only for low level indicator. Okay, for level is given level indicator. Then for what else is there? For temperature, anything is given? Temperature indicator is there. Then for pressure? Pressure indicator controller. Then safeguards another relief valve. We have one, we told one relief valve and one more relief system. What is it? Nitrogen. Now what is for nitrogen used for?
To increase this to decrease this flammability.
It's an inert gas, not allow oxygen. So in case of say fire, we can put on that. It's inert gas. So that's another safeguard. Then okay, so these are the safeguards now. You understood now what are the parameters that you need to look into it, what are the safeguards. So what can be the costs now, just in mini HAZOP, what can be the cost of no level in this? See, the tank from tank truck, the tank truck,
might not be working
which Which one? V5 may be stuck up or it's not working. Okay, then
Or the tank or the truck might be empty.
okay, good. Then any this wall or something, this line rupture or something, leakage from this also cannot allow a level into this. Then
Or level indicator is not working.
this level indicator is failure of this malfunction of this of the level indicator. Then
So pressure may rise.
no for we pressure is a different parameter. Now we are talking about the level in this. What can be the causes of level in this? Till now we have talked about 4 5 causes. Anything else? Say, is there can anything? If this is open,
V2 will be completely V2.
V2 okay. If by chance this V3 is kept open, this will without knowing this will be kept right. Okay. Then so this is for in terms of level. Then in terms of what can be the cause of pressure in this?
V8 might be closed.
You're continuously pressing the flammable liquid. So, okay, you're continuously pressurizing it. That is, you're making it full. So there are possibility of it getting highly pressurized, and that can lead to vapor generation, and then it can lead to fire. In case of small ignition, also it can lead to, or in case of static charges, also it can lead to this thing. So that can lead pressure means that can lead to temperature rise also. Okay. So that's how you take level, temperature, pressure, flow, all these things, and then you can. What is the safeguards? What are the costs of this? It can be. We have seen the cost. The consequence. What can be the consequence? Fire and explosion. It can be environmental damage. All these things, and then recommendation. What can we give the recommendations? If it's not there, we can give. We can suggest for. We have only low level indicator, so we don't have a level this thing, high level thing. We can suggest for a high level indicator with an alarm. It's only indicator. In case it happens, it should cut off this valve. A high level indicator with interlocking the inlet valve or inlet pump. So those type of recommendations, so that the cost is mitigated. This is risk ranking. These are some of the limitations. The standards, the software that used for doing this HAZOP is PHA Pro, and the standards that followed is BSI 61882. This is standards where we use the guide words and all this, which we stand. Just one sample. We have one reactor here, and we are that is we are preparing urea. One is that ammonia solution, and then one is phosphoric acid into the reactor. So just one example like this. The process section is phosphoric acid feed line to the reactor. Design intent is feed phosphoric acid at a controlled rate to the, that is the design intent. Feed flows the design intent. So guide word is, what is the guide word using? No flow. Design intent is flow. Guide word is no. Process parameter is flow. So deviation is no flow. What can be the cause of no flow? Already you like no feed material in the phosphoric acid tank. Flow indicator control is this thing. Operator sets the flow control low. Then the valve fails. Plugging of the line, maybe leak or rupture line. So these are like what you discussed. These are the causes. The consequence can be, say, like it can be excess ammonia with reactor leading to toxic release. So those are the consequences. So safeguards are periodic. They do the periodic maintenance of the valve, and actions like we can suggest. We can suggest for a level indicator or something like that. So these are just a basic example of that. I give you this. I've given a lot of examples for you to go through also. One. This is just a little more complicated. Those we saw only simple things, simple thing. This is, I'll just explain to you. This is a furnace. Basically, just 5 minutes. This is a furnace. Okay. Here we are using this thermic hot oil is used for heating any process thing. So maybe from 60 degrees it's heated to 350 or 200 degrees, 300, 320 degrees. Okay. So how do we heat it? We have a natural gas. that's coming from here through a burner. It heats that furnace. Hot gas heats that oil going into that, and then it goes out. So what are those things? What are those parameters and safeguards here? Say one is this liquid flow is coming into this. First, what we have there? Flow control valve. That's for flow. It flow controller and FAL is alarm. That is it senses the flow, and it also controls this. They said that at this much wall you need to flow, say 5 meter cubed or something. So it controls the wall, and then in case it goes beyond that 5 meter cubed, it gives an alarm. But okay, this doesn't cut off anything. This only gives alarm. In case if more flow comes, it doesn't cut off this wall, or it doesn't cut off this heating system. This limited to only giving alarm. Okay, so it gets heated up, and then it goes outside. It's coming 60 degrees. It gets heated up to 300 degrees. Above 300 degrees, what is this? Temperature switch. Okay, so I say about, say if it goes to 310, it will sense, this temperature switch will cut off. It will cut off what? It will cut off this. What it should cut off what? It should either cut off this incoming flow, or it should cut off this feeder. Otherwise, the temperature will keep rising. Okay, it's only cutting off this. It's cutting off the. In case if it reaches 310 degrees, it's cutting off only the gas flow. This is only heating it. Okay, then what do we have? What else do we have? We have this natural gas for heating this furnace. So what are the safeguards here? We have a pressure regulating valve. It's coming at say 3 kgs. If it's going above that, it will cut off. Pressure regulating valve, and then a pressure switch. It goes above that. This pressure switch will cut off this control valve. Okay. Then we have this main control valve. This dotted line is showing that it's interlocking. That is, if the temperature goes high, this temperature element senses, it will cut off this control valve. So no gas will go. So no this thing will be there. Okay. So how you this bit deep. If you go through the Hasoff for this, you will understand. Say here, what and all parameters will take? Flow of oil, flow of one is oil, flow of natural gas also can be taken. Then pressure of natural gas. Pressure of this also can be taken, because incoming pressure. No pressure means what can be the cause of no pressure, what can be the cause of no flow or this thing. Then temperature of what?
Temperature of oil outlet.
Only temperature outlet. And what about this furnace? This damper is there. This can get heated up. This continuously heating this. This also can get pressurized if this by chance we close this damper. Pressure also can increase in this. Temperature also can rise. So we have to see different parameters in this. Okay. Level will come in this. Level will not be. Is there?
There won't be any level.
Level will not be there. Any other thing as well as other than reverse flow can happen? In case this keep on flowing, reverse flow can happen. Then as well as means instead of two operations, both this is also as well as, that's not possible here. Only reverse flow can happen. Other than also it's not possible, because you're heating only sending in one thing. Okay, so this is how you put in the stable, and then you take one on guide word, you take one on node, take one node. This first you take this furnace as a node, then you take this coil as a node, then you take this as a node. So then you keep putting all these parameters, deviations, cause, consequence of this. Okay. If you had time, you could have did this, but it would have been interesting. Anyway, I've given this examples for you. You have an idea now of, I'm just giving you the basic examples, but already I think you are now aware of how to so any other doubts? Because no, we are not, time is there. If you have anything, you can ask. and how we do a HAZOP, basically basic intent, what is the methodology used, how we do a safety audit, what are the elements that we do. You have any other queries? Because the other things next they'll be going to this other techniques like QRA and other things. So still don't know that. A lot of examples are there, but since the lack of time. If you have any queries, we can just